Welcome, I'm on. Apologize for the delay. My name is Stephen Leon, and I'm running for Congress in Virginia's 8th District. And today's show is going to be about political corruption and prenatal volition. And it looks like I got my screen to share, so that's good. But I will come back to that. We'll go ahead and give us the gist of what political corruption is. So political corruption in America is all about the money, right? So through our very short history, we have essentially turned our party systems into businesses. And that's kind of alienating. You know what I mean? It's very common for a product or whatever to they can be held accountable, with false advertising, or if it's whatever, you know what I mean? We have systems in play to do that. But when it comes to our federal government, and especially some of the things with political free speech and all that, not all of it's protected. Nothing we don't have absolute freedom. We have constitutional freedom. So when it comes to political corruption, what's happening is basically as soon as our elected officials get into office, they're spending 70% of their time campaigning for the next election as soon as they get in. So that only leaves them 30% time to actually do anything. So when you take the mixtures of ideology and a lot of certain things that today's from the left, we're definitely going to say that there's a lot of things on the right that are what would be unconstitutional, if on a religious basis, or if that's from just not what we've attained as a majority, right? So I've said it before, reiterating that, there's a lot of similarities with what's going on today than what happened around the Civil War era. We have a lot more infrastructure and things like that, so we're not talking about war, but we do see a lot of isolated things, J6 included. And so it took 50 years of congressional debates and a war to pass Amendment 13. Plus, Lincoln had done, if you've ever seen the Lincoln movie by Spielberg, shows a pretty good, historically accurate take on what Lincoln went through, even some of the things that Thaddeus Stevens, he was a Republican, to hear that he would call out the Southern Democrats. I love that. Like, how we're able to look at that in hindsight and accept it and find entertainment and even be inspired that we can go, here's a venue for us that we can speak in such manners where there's not violence. Oh, well, I mean, there wasn't a war going on, but that there's not a war going on today. So to be able to stand there and talk about these things, especially in the Democratic Party, because there's a lot of corruption going on in the Democratic Party, and I'll get to that. And I have no problems calling out my own party. And I really haven't I'm 43, and haven't really taken a lot of stock into really, not a lot of people do, into the details of what is going on. You kind of just, again, like a business, you trust whatever car mechanic is up there, and if they mess up, you have intuition or whatever. But if you dig deep, especially with what we have going on now, you'll see or what that is. Political corruption isn't necessarily or particularly federal government. To say that all the federal government needs is just corrupt, that's not fair. You know what I mean? People get dishonorably discharged from the military, from conduct. There's very specific rules for that. You can get fired from a job. There's HR rules. There's things to help you out, get you there, and things like that. So you can't just level the whole playing field just because things aren't going your way, right? So, but what we could define corruption in the U.S. is the money. So this is really something that has evolved into my campaign, where my opponent, I'm running as an independent, but of course my bias is still left. If you're independent, there's a poll out there on Axios that I've just riddled throughout the internet. If you just Google Axios independent, and you'll see that most people are politically independent, but you're going to have your bias. Like, what does it genuinely mean to be an independent. I think that I've done that job where I've assembled a platform based on the collective interests. But Don Beyer has got all kinds of money. If you go to capitaltrades.com, you can find out who elected official is spending money on it, what they're doing with money. That's the thing about it, is that these CEOs will go in there and just write the laws, or just the lack of them. This 118th Congress is one of the worst we've ever had. So nothing, it's just nothing's getting done, especially when it comes to climate. You know what I mean? People are just appeasing to each end. And the majority is pretty clear with what the people want if it comes to the environment or women's rights or whatever. But with political corruption, Don Beyer, he's doubled his net worth, more than doubled his net worth since being our elected representative. He's ranked number 2 in the most house trades. I think Mark Warner might be like number 1. And these guys are here in Virginia. And I need to look at that. I mean, I'm going to give a shout out to that song, that really popular song by a guy. It's Richmond, north of Richmond. That song just took over. That I had to hear that. I had to listen to that. And he seems pretty independent from where you can't just say because a guy has a certain style of music that he's left or right. That's just not fair. Look at what Willie Nelson does. He covered a Coldplay song. You know what I mean? So hopefully that's another venue for us to actually unify. I've seen some things. It just makes sense. You know what I mean? Like, we can come together with these things, and why can't we do that with politics? Well, let's play the same game. All right, let's do that. So the solution, excuse me, to resolving corruption with money, because again, that's going to sway you into not doing your job. That's one of the aspects. The other one is the ideology. That's another podcast. But so we're going to share this screen here, and I guess you cannot see my face. Maybe you can. I can't. But I know you can see my screen now. And if you go to, this thing just takes the top bar to my website. I would imagine, I hope that's not too small, but out of all the things that take equal priority, it's very common that a politician, just whatever trend, just picks that one thing most important and they fly with it. Well, I have to look at all the things, right? And I mean, mine is the climate change, and you can argue that without a sustainable climate, we don't have anything, right? And anything that you've heard against that is just media disillusionment. It says they got into your head, and it's, you know what I mean? Anyway, so I would, from all the disarray that's going out there, and especially where the 118th Congress is, if you look at their, I'll do this, and go to, is it Axios Congress? Something like that. Yeah, to hunt for it. I've got it littered through here. But my opponent, I love that my opponent just points his finger at the right, thinking he's spending more time to get his master's degree, which is probably not going to go anywhere. I mean, it'll be useful, but he's corrupt. You know what I mean? So right here, this one right here, it's that's the 118th Congress. That's how many bills have been enacted, right? And you have no credibility. So anyways, the American Anti-Corruption Act. I had assembled, I found this, I think it was like 3 or 4 years ago. This American Anti-Corruption Act has been developed by representatives since 2013. Elizabeth Warren had campaigned on an American Anti-Corruption Act back in 2020 presidential election. But hers was too, it made me say that the money was so, like, you got to have some money. The way that it was laid out to me, it seemed like one would have to be born into public service and you'd have to wear a toga. That's a little exaggerating, just the way that it's too far stretched. She didn't take, and I wonder, I called her out. I don't know her, but I've asked her, like, did you just rip the American Anti-Corruption Act from Represent Us and make it your own? Or was this something that just was coincidence? It's kind of specific there with the American Anti-Corruption Act. You know, you can go to my website, you can check that out. All these links go to credible sources. They will tell you, just I could bore you and read it for you, but it tells you how to rank choice voting is in there too, because redistricting based off what the right has been doing. That's why DeSantis is one of the reasons why it failed, and judges all over the country deemed it unconstitutional. You can't subjugate people like that, right? But let's say not all gerrymandering, or also known as redistricting, is wrong or unconstitutional, right? It's let's say with geology, let's say something happens in Yellowstone, let's say hurricane destroys an area or something, some natural disaster, then redistricting would be necessary. So um Jennifer Lawrence, everyone knows her. This is it took me 2 or 3 times to watch this, to really grasp it, to really get it. You know what I mean? It's only a 10-minute video, and then just to kind of see that, but then just that's just like with anything else. So that's it. Basically, what the American Anti-Corruption Act will do is it will make the politicians work. I don't know if it's fair to say, just if you stop the conflicts of interest and political bribery, this would change the whole field. This is something Trump couldn't do. He said he was going to drain the swamp. He ended up getting in trouble, and then he just pointed the fingers at the federal government like he does, or just pointed the fingers in general, and then he pointed them at the federal government. The federal government's there to hold the society together, the fundamental. You know what I mean? I work in IP law, and a lot of that is our lawyers work with the patent office. All our filings are done with the patent office. That's federal. That doesn't get affected in the government shutdown, but I recognize, especially here, it's a big deal. That's something that's going on. You know, they're not giving us very many details on what it is. We have to rely on the media. It would be nice if our politicians could just stop the personality charades and just itemize what it is that we're not. And then that could accord, it's going to be, I guarantee you, it's either an imbalance of the general welfare or fiscal responsibility, or something completely unconstitutional, right? So you can go through here. This getting the PAC money, that's gonna, again, it's gonna change everything. A lot of people who are working for Act Blue or whatever it is, that are just raising money, the fundraisers themselves, they're gonna be out of a job. It's too bad, you know what I mean? Like, so, but there's specific times. Like, I can't tell you how, right, there's billions of dollars being circulated. It's stalemating us like a business. You know what I mean? But that's not fair. This is our holy grail. You know what I mean? With what we're doing, especially if a lot of people, if more people knew what was going on with the climate, and it's not media hype. I get it. When Y2K, I was 18 when Y2K came through. I may have mentioned this in another podcast. I was like, this is media hype. You know what I mean? They're going to figure it out. And they did. That's because they had people working there to figure that out. So when it comes to climate change, the government needs to do more. Or COVID, what the socioeconomics that in result of that, it's going to get 10, 20, 30 times worse, incalculably worse. So yeah, read that American Anti-Corruption Act. It's not just Jennifer Lawrence. They're the face of it. They've looked into it. It was developed by a former FEC chairman, and also constitutional scholars have looked at this. And it's just that simple. They already have done their own polling. 90% across party aisles of the people support it. They support this. So it wouldn't be very difficult for me to get into office, and then they know it would be coming. It'd be great if the people in my district voted for me, and everyone would know why I was voted in. Very specific. Very forthcoming with everything that's on here, right? And I'm gonna, very simple, get a spreadsheet, you know what I mean? Circulate it, have some rows in there with every elected official, and then it's not just simple as yay, nay, and why. And I have to develop a very simple spreadsheet, and the press will ask me every week, well, I'm waiting on this person, this person, this person, this person. And that will prove their salvation or their termination. So if we need a compromise on something, there's term limits that are in here. There's an organization out there. They sent me a mailer. It's like is 9. I think this one says 9, and the U.S. term limits organization, I think they're calling for like 3. I have to look at it again. There's a lot of information out there. So that's a big deal. If you want to talk about resolving anything that matters most to you, whatever it is, then if it has public support, you've got a 30%. If it has 100% public support, you have a 30% chance of it resolving. If that's climate change, if that's women's rights, rainbow rights, gun violence, healthcare and education, lots of things, just everything that's on the board right now. Border security and immigration, 30% chance, right? All of it, everything that the Biden administration has, you give them a 30%. So, yeah, I can ramble on about the American Capitalism Protection Act. Another big thing, and this is a big one for, I know that a lot of the audience here is on the right, which is why I named my show From the Left, is pro-choice. Prenatal volition is the medical distinction that I have given it. Prenatal volition means it's a broad scope medical term. This paper here, I have seeded, and it's very constitutional. I'll go ahead now. I've got 13 minutes. 15 minutes flew by. So on June 24th, 2022, the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade on the basis that Amendment 14 is not the appropriate provision for any prenatal volition. This is now presently rested with the individual states to determine. Now, I've read their argument, and coming from the legal field, it makes sense. But then you also, on the other hand, you have people, the majority of the people want this. Coming from Virginia, Sierra law, that's not going anywhere. The termination of pregnancy, abortion is done by trimester. So you can pretty much take care of it on your own within the first trimester. I'm just kind of paraphrasing. You really have to look at it's not hard. VA, these days, VA list code abortion. And you can see this is coming from the oldest lawmaking body in the world. And we're not changing this. We're not. So we don't need a federal guideline. And that's what this paper is intending to see. You go through it, it explains when it is lawful during the first trimester, second, and after the second. See that in that language may not adopt to everywhere. It's just how the people are, like synonyms and interchangeable terms. You know what I mean? Women choose, there's so many circumstances. You can't even fathom. It's impossible to enumerate why a woman would choose an abortion. And abortions have been conducted since biblical times. The Bible mentions nothing about it. It's probably been done before that too. So as we are a more perfect people and we're addressing this issue with modern reasoning is what I love John Adams' inauguration speech. If you hear that, he says in there, and I'm in effect, is developing a system of government and laws when it springs fresh from an enlightened people, more amiable than when it stems from remote antiquity. So that's what he's saying. It's like, do we adopt everything, forms of government, religion that didn't work and just cause more problems than they're aimed to solve? Then look at we have a lot of things going on, but look from how we have moved forward since the European settlers, and the issues that we quarrel about are much different than what's going on in the rest of the world. They're fighting things, boundaries. It's always about boundaries. Right? So, but we're getting there. We don't have the same problems over, and that's saying something. So in that paper, we go on, this is key. Listen to this. On October 11th, 2022, the Supreme Court declined to decide, it's not the legal language that they would use, but they declined to decide whether fetuses are entitled to constitutional rights. Whereas a social security number and certificate of birth are self-evident to this determination. So you could come up with all different kinds of when does life begin. I'm going to get to that. I nailed it in one simple page here. If prenatal volition ought to be federal law under USC 42, certain balancing parameters must be understood at the national level, where a majority of the republic may democratically impose prenatal volition constitutional. There's a thing with IVF going on. I think if you Google Trump political views on CNN. Wolf Blitzer did an interview with him, and he says that he identifies as more Democrat Republican. He's being vague. He's not. He's saying economies have done well under both Democrats and Republicans. He doesn't know which way he's going, and now he supports IVF. You know what I mean? It's like, dude, wow. You know what I mean? I get people change their ideas and stuff, but people don't like it too much when you get into politics and you're affecting their lives, and then one day you just do the complete opposite. You know, just because you're in a business of it for what? For what? I mean, I don't understand that, and I'm sure I'm speaking on the voice of the silent majority. We don't understand that. Maybe if you came at me with any item on my agenda, and I was like, well, I didn't see that. I thought I'd done the research on that, and then come at me. Let's see what you can do. Let's see if you can pick any holes, even one, in my plan. So, per Amendment 1, rational basis here. It is commonly understood that it would be unconstitutional for interpretation of any religion as basis to constitute the legal parameters of any prenatal volition. This is good. I got in an argument with this woman named Lucy on my Facebook. Oh man, she just didn't get this. Just because I looked at, I'm a bit of a scientist. I look at things rationally. Intellectual property law will do that for you. Science law and toys. But you have to look. It's all about science. It's either works or it doesn't, right? So it has been determined that a life is legally pronounced deceased when a heartbeat cannot be detected or revived. This ought to be the same for when a life begins, which is between 17 and 20 weeks after gestation. Now, that doesn't mean that that's when abortion stops. That's just when we define. Life begins at, you know what I mean? Like their tree have sperm and eggs, you know what I mean? They're alive, but they behave like magnets. They don't have a conscience. They don't have a brain. They can't make choice. You know what I mean? So, but they're still alive. But when a human being, an animal, is alive, when it has a heartbeat. Because if we're using that same rationality that when it's deceased, when you see something that was once alive, when it's dead, its heartbeat can't be revived. Okay. But again, that's not the line that I'm drawing here. That this is not the one, the silent majority conscience that I have. As of 2020, most abortions, and this is surprising, 93% occur before 13 weeks of gestation. Now, I guarantee most women I can't guarantee that most women didn't know that I'd like to think that intuitively they probably made the decision, hey, I can't keep this thing for many, many different reasons. Oh, wow. I've gotten into women's heads about this, and they don't always let me go and speak on behalf of them. So I'm lucky to even make it this far, especially with that woman, Lucy, on there. She doesn't even watch my videos. She just drops in and heckles on my Facebook. She doesn't get this paper. She thinks I'm advocating for bans or loopholes. It's not. She's resentful. She's resentful. So, to conclude that per Amendment 1, religion thereby moot cannot be applied to prenatal volition. Legally, at state level, a child is recognized with a certificate of birth and federally with a social security number. So you think of child. You heard Nikki Haley say that she did the same thing with like slavery. She's trying to communicate that, yeah, Amendment 13 was about equal prosperity, but she couldn't come out and say it. It was fundamentally, that was the thing, right? But she just couldn't say it. So when she's saying that an embryo is a fetus, or is it, she sees them as babies. I get that. You know what I mean? Let's say you were a plant lover. You know what I mean? You saw, see, that's going to be a plant one day. Whatever it is, whatever. Just seems, if it's her lack of communication skills or whatever it might be, it just doesn't. So, but again, like I said something to her on Facebook or Twitter, X, that moons aren't planets, asteroids aren't moons. They found some evidence. I don't know what instrument they used, but they found. I didn't like the way that the title was on this thing, that they found life on an asteroid. No, they found the seeds of life, with certain amino acids and things like that. So look at it like that. And in women's choice, abortion is nothing new. It's not. And I'm not saying it's okay. I'm not saying that it isn't okay. I'm just saying it's a fundamental right that women want. And we've been going on this stuff for over 50 years. The majority is clear, just like it was with economic prosperity for all. It's amazing on how, to me, that Southern Democrats are responsible for holding on to slavery, where now Republicans are holding on to what the majority believes isn't constitutional. We don't need a war. We don't need it. It's not gonna happen. It's not gonna happen. So you hear all kinds of chatter about it. So the federally coded, this is what Lucy couldn't understand. the federally codified standard for the decision in maternal prenatal volition is that of termination of pregnancy without mitigating circumstances ought to be the lesser of 3 months. So 3 months, and that's kind of like our Virginia law, right? And then everything after that, access to human services must be appropriated otherwise. So that leaves it open for the states to decide. At least you have that 3 months. But when you're dealing with human services, especially the way that's kind of extrapolated from what I would call our Virginia model, where there's a lot of mental health reasonings and things. There's so many different personal decisions that women would, whether it just leaves it open to the states at that point. This would be the federal protected codification that we're looking for. And again, I get it. You want to get emotional about it. I talked to people about, I crashed a March for Life thing one time, and I talked to this woman, and I could see the sorrow in her eyes. And I do my best to move on. I can't hold on to other people's pain. I have my own things to deal with. And just like us all, I'm not going to go and stick my nose into somewhere, even if it's for my own spiritual beliefs. You know what I mean? I have my beliefs, and and that's pretty much what the United States is about. So, it's just that I get it. Like the calling it murder, calling abortion murder is not accurate. Calling the border crisis and invasion, again, not legally accurate. It's just, you just need to get with it. If we can get the right to meet us on the left, and if I need to be that front man to do that and listen to, I hear that the arguments on the right when it comes to fiscal responsibility, we just, everyone, my friends that I talk to about it's the governor or the mayor of New York and just giving illegal immigrants a $10,000 credit card. Like, what do you do with them? Wow. Like, that's what it's come down to, because Biden messed up. But even then, how much control does he have over the socioeconomics in Mexico? Well, that's why I developed my plan. I saw where both sides were messing up. And then, per Amendment 8, this one I love. Per Amendment 8, no criminal penalties or excess human services fees shall be imposed for the civil matter. What is cruel and unusual? That's what Amendment 8 is. What is cruel and unusual? To sentence a woman for murder for a practice that has been conducted even since prior to biblical times. Think about that. Like, what this manufacturing. You can watch some of these movies out there and they see how they push these narratives. I just saw this movie Vice about Dick Cheney. Christian Bale plays Vice. Amy Adams plays his wife, and how they push through these focus groups what to sell to people. Some of these things that happen organically, and some things they just fabricated. So we shouldn't look at things so synthetically. Anyhow, 30 minutes just flew by. I hope that was good enough for everyone. Yeah, screen sharing worked. So next week I'll try and improve and get a better package. I think I'm doing, can't remember what next week's show is. It's climate change and the revelations of climate change. I think that's what it is. I'm going to go ahead and cut out just with, I don't know how many seconds. Anyhow, thank you. Good night.